The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
George, what's happening?
Not a lot, man. What's going on with you?
We spent this time shooting aliens. Lots of aliens.
Tremendous sums of aliens, and in fact, a horde of aliens that seemed never ending, almost Sisyphusian in our endeavor.
So my favorite fact about this game, Contra 3, the Alien Wars.
Not a alien war, the alien wars.
Yeah, that's a definite article, my friend. It was released in North America on my birthday.
Aw.
I mean, not the year, but on my birthday day.
Huh. Interesting. So on the day of your birth, the alien said, like, this far, no further. It's time to invade. And then the alien wars happened.
Yeah.
And,
that particular guy has to be stopped.
Yeah. So in a war between humanity and the aliens, you are the number one threat.
Yeah, I'm the
seems
John
legit.
Connor of this terrible franchise.
and yet even though there's only this one video game that we've played, I could say that I would rather watch a movie based off of this game that was, not like a 5-star, game than watch some of the later in the Terminator series.
Oh, I gave up after 3.
Yeah.
I know that there are other movies.
I think I'm up to speed on them. I don't know. It's hard to tell, like, whether or not I was like watching these movies or being punched repeatedly about the head until I had a concussion. But we digress. Contra 3, Alien Wars.
Yeah, so one of the first things I noticed about this, and I know this probably sounds really stupid to anyone who takes game design or game mechanics or anything, critically, like we are, let's face it, pretending to do here, is this game and all games like this game, they're bullet hell games on foot. Right? Like it's the exact same kind of aesthetic. Like there's crap coming at you from all directions and you have to shoot that crap.
And that's interesting because two things. One is you mentioned that this game came out on your birthday. Did it also come with a cover of your mother's maiden name? I'm asking for a friend.
just in case, or maybe the high school that I went to, or my first car,
like
make and model.
No, but yeah, actually, when I was playing, because I had never, I forget if we've mentioned it in another episode, but I had never heard of the phrase bullet hell game before. So when we first played a bullet hell game, I mentioned it to you, and you're like, "Oh yeah, is that bullet hell game?" I'm like, "It's like a flying game." No. Why are you swearing at me? And so then, like you said, that's the thing. So as I was playing this, I'm like, I actually thought, would this fall into that category? Because I felt as close to seizing with this game as I did with some of the other ones we played. So I was like, this feels the same, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the technical. I mean, because the controls are a little different in that you don't have total freedom of movement the way you do. So I mean, it's a platformer with lots and lots and lots and lots of shooting.
So,
and I think the platformer is probably the genre it would fall under. But I mean, the play style, the way it makes you feel as a player is way closer to a bullet hell game than to friggin' Mario.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I say like it would be like if Sonic and Gradius performed the fusion dance. Like that, I feel like that get pretty close to. I mean, actually, yeah, no, those two games smashed together because you got the space and bullet hellness from Gradius, and then the attitude of Sonic.
Yeah, I know it's not this game, but in between every level, when there's like the still pixel art of like dude or dudes with guns, all I could think of was the opening to, oh god, is it Streets of Rage or Final Fight? That's oh no, it must be oh crap, it might be I don't know. All these games are blending. All those fight 'em up, like beat 'em up games are blending together. But it's Are you a bad enough dude to save? Oh, it's Bad Dudes. That's literally the name of the game. Bad Dudes. It's Are you a bad enough dude to save the president? And I mean, one, that is just an amazing question to pose to a person. And
Yes.
two, the aesthetic, because I mean, this game came out in the 90s, or at least it hit consoles in the 90s, so it might have been the very late 80s it was originally conceived. But I mean, it's mullets, it's tank tops, it's Rambo, right? It's Rambo with aliens.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's Rambo 3 with aliens because, it doesn't,
Well,
it's not
yes.
Rambo 1. There's none of that nuance that was in Rambo 1. Like, there's none of that. And I don't know, man. First of all, I've never heard the game. Are you bad enough of a dude to say that?
Well, no, the game is just called Bad Dudes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So wait, that makes a little bit more sense. But two, I wouldn't even know what to do if somebody came up to me like, "Are you a bad enough dude to save the president?" I'm like, confident that the answer to that question is no. Like, it depends on what's coming after him. But considering the plethora of things that can come after a president versus the average things I deal with in my day-to-day life, I'm confident that the answer to that question is no. So if somebody said like, "Well, this game will let you find out," I'd be like, hard pass. But thank you.
Well, and anytime someone speaks to you in the language you feel you're most fluent in, and you're like, I understood all the words in that sentence, and I even understood the grammar of how they were strung together, but I don't really follow your meaning.
Yeah.
Like, is there a bad dude scale I'm just now learning about that I'm expected to be somewhere on?
And is it like, because then it's just like, is it, the Kelvin scale? Like, is a 0 like there is no badness, or is it that there's no dude? Because like, I mean, that's sexist. That's messed up. So,
well, I mean, like anything made in the 80s, women were allowed to wear bikinis, men were required to wear tank tops.
Yep.
And thank God you, just like in a bullet hell game, like, I don't even know why there's a fire button, right? Because
right.
Like, why would you let it go ever for any reason? Like, there's no tactical reason to stop shooting.
No, and that does elegantly bring us back to Contra 3. Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll probably touch on it more in gameplay, but no, I had the fire button down all the time. There was no reason not to, and I just, I think that I could have just choked the aliens with my shells, like my shell casings, like
that is what ultimately wins the day.
Yeah, is it? But then the downside is that the economy is thrown into like this horrible spiral because I've used all of the metal on Earth to fire bullets at these aliens. I'm pretty confident I used all of the metal on Earth.
Well, so I want to ask first before we get into like visuals and talk about the game proper. You and I had a very different nostalgia experience of this game in that I thought I was firing an arrow at the target, but I was actually, my back was to the target, and there was like a mirror that I could see the target's reflection in, but I didn't know it was a mirror because all of my memories were of Contra. And
The
this
Contra.
the Contra, and this is in fact Contra 3. And I remember texting you this week and asking you how your playthrough was going, and I was like, oh, so did you yet realize that you were thinking of Contra and not Contra 3, to which you said...
I said, because at that point I hadn't played it yet, but I was like, I'm pretty confident that it's Contra 3 that I'm remembering because I didn't have an NES at my dad's house, and that is where I played this game. So I was correct. This is the game that I remembered. So I will be viewing it through nostalgia goggles, and you will be viewing it through
not quite nostalgia goggles, but it, like, I definitely played this game, but it's man, it's crap. We played another game that this exact thing happened to you, where you were like, oh, I was thinking of X, and this is in fact Y. So it's like. And I mean, the Contra games are designed to be this way. Like, it's more of the same, right? You're not coming for a fresh new experience. It's kind of like you don't really get into a Mario game. Like you played Super Mario World because you love Super Mario 3, right? You wanted more of that, but better in ways you never even imagined, but still the same. And that's a good series should be like that. And so even though I kept realizing like, oh no, that was Contra. No, wait, no, definitely the original Contra. Like, there was at no point where I felt like that detracted from the experience. It's not like I was expecting Terminator 2 and I got Terminator Genesis. It was like I was expecting Terminator 2 and I got Terminator 1. So I was like, yeah,
Right.
it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fine.
Yeah, you're like, oh, it's polished a little bit different. It's okay, but there's no wacky time physics or anything like that. Yeah, no, I think for me, like I said, like I actually remembered it, but I definitely would say that it's not, where you're like, oh, I can't play Contra 3 because I'll be completely lost in the highly cerebral storyline. It's not like you had to like go wiki, Contra 2 and be like, oh, well, what happened in that one? Because otherwise this isn't gonna make any sense.
On the last episode of Contra. Yeah, no, you need. Well, all of the background is actually. This is my segue into the game now because all of the background story is summed up in the opening, which is kind of really beautiful pixel art where an alien ship comes. It says the year. And there's like a city sky, like an ultra dense, like mega city. Cause I think it's the year like 2646.
Yes, and I did actually like that because okay, full disclosure, all I saw at the opening was AD 2636, and I said whatever, and I hit start and then started playing the game, and I kept meaning to go back and like actually watch it, and I didn't. So I'll be hearing this from the first time through you, but I did remember thinking to myself, I like the fact that they picked a very distant year, because a small part of me bums out every time when they're like in the distant year 2005, and I'm like, yeah, I don't remember 2005 being like this. Like, I think I don't think that I'd be playing this video game right now if 15 years ago or whatever 12 years ago like that happened. So
the recovery was swift and effective. No, once we made peace with the aliens, they were like, oh, we'll just fix it. No, so it's the opening is like a ship, kind of like Independence Day style, like fills the sky, and then like a laser beam comes out of it, and then in I don't know 2 frames of animation, so a fraction of a second, the city goes from being totally fine to just being ruins as far as the eye can see. Like
Nice.
Edge to edge of the screen is now devastation, which did make me think back to another stupid thing from our childhood, which was, it's too bad it's Sunday. Those buildings would have been full of people on Monday.
Yes. And then all of a sudden you just see like an airplane like flying through and it explodes. And it's like, look, I can see their parachutes. No parachutes.
No
They're
parachutes.
all dead.
Blew up the cargo robot. So like the thing that I found interesting about that is that it's visually so ridiculous. Like everything is just suddenly on fire with no warning, but it tells you everything you need to know. Like, you're a human, so you identify with the human-looking city. That thing up in the sky is not a human, and that thing up in the sky just destroyed everything you identify with in like literally an instant.
Right.
And now you have a tank top and a gun, and that's it. That's your background.
Yep. Oh yeah. No, and that's very this is tangential, but and it's something that I think is worth looking into if you haven't. But there's a very distinctly different myth of the gun between Japan and America, and this is a wildly American version of the myth of the gun. Because like
yes.
the myth of the gun in Japanese culture is that the gun is the extension of the person, and it's the person that is like mastery, which is why most of the time you see like Gundams and things like that, where it's like the person is the gun. This is like, the world has ended. You are a Navy SEAL. All you have is your training and this gun. Now go save, I guess, what's left of the world. I don't know. Maybe it's more of an I Am Legend thing, and it's like you should have just let it go. But I didn't. I threw my many lives and my many dead bodies onto the pile.
Yeah, but I do think that opening and then the gameplay itself, which is the opening cinematic is in cinematic, right? It's a Super Nintendo game, but the opening cinematic is in no way like fancier than anything you're about to see, and the whole game is just over the top, like almost proto Duke Nukem style, like super bright colors. you always know what the bad guys are because they're the only other thing that moves.
Hmm.
Like, did you notice zero things that move don't require you to shoot them with, ooh, maybe one exception. There's one spinning platform I can think of. So the platform like spins
Hmm.
and you hang on to it. And I think that is literally the only thing in the game that moves that you are not supposed to shoot.
There's one other thing, and maybe you can shoot it. I did not try, but in the first level, there's like these like little like it's on the sidewalk,
Oh,
not when the whole
the fire.
where the fire like shoots up and you're supposed to like jump in between them. And then even then there's
Okay, I guess you're not supposed to shoot the fire, but if this character could shoot out a fire, he definitely would.
I mean, you certainly take a swing at it, right? Yeah, no,
Really? You wouldn't say he'd take a shot?
too on the nose, man. You got to keep people guessing. Yeah, no, it's very simplistic in that sense, but I think that like we've discussed before, for bullet hell games, it has to be.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Yeah, if you had to distinguish friend from foe.
yeah, no, and at no point is that ever a concern. Yeah, and overall, I thought that the graphics were very good in the sense that because as we continue doing these episodes, um, because the people are very like over the top and almost iconic, because at least for Americans, Rambo, if you say Rambo, you probably initially would picture Sylvester Stallone. But that being said, if you had somebody who looked nothing like Sylvester Stallone, but like in the muddy tank top, with the bandana tied around his, muscly arm and, the whole thing, you'd be like, who's that guy look like? It's like, oh, well, we got a Rambo over here, like,
Yeah.
so the fact that that's what they were trying to render as the hero, at no point was I just was like, yeah, no, that's me, Rambo. I'm just running around shooting everything.
Yeah.
And
Shooty McShoots a lot. I get it.
yep.
I don't need to ask anyone what my motivation is. Like, I have a gun. They are going to receive bullets from my gun.
Yep. Yeah.
They're seen.
And also too, I think that it's interesting because, like you said, pretty much everything that moves, like, kills you, and everything that moves deserves your immediate respect for its immediate threat to your life and well-being, right?
Well, and the power-ups, which are the only other thing that move, but you do need to shoot them.
Right, you do need to shoot them. But that being said, so like then the power-up hits the ground, right? And I can't imagine a way they could have telegraphed this is a good thing more than a literal eagle that holds the power up.
Yeah,
I mean,
and it doesn't move.
yeah, it doesn't move, it like hits the ground. But even if I was like tentative, I'm like, I don't know, man. I mean, might as well just said like Bro Force USA, like across the thing, So I was just kind of like, I'm pretty confident that touching this will not kill me. And then we can definitely touch on this in gameplay. But that being said, too, I played it pretty fast and loose with things I was willing to try because the amount of times that I died was my own life became frivolous at some point where I just be like, touch it, see if it killed me. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll get to that in mechanics. But I like your distinction of like how do the graphics look versus serving gameplay, and I think that even though I would say everything is fairly equally bright, I never and there are things that are the same colors as you. Like the main character when you're in single player is a white guy with blonde hair and red tank top. But there are definitely red and yellow things about. Like there's no one else that looks human, but there are other things that are humanoid in size, but they're usually like pink or purple or green. Like they're clearly not you. And
Right.
you are almost always in the dead center of the screen, except when there's small sections where the screen either stops or is moving automatically. So it's really obvious where you are. And anything that's moving that's not you, you should be shooting. So like
Yeah.
there's a ton of crap on screen at any moment, and yet totally clear on like there's me, there's an enemy, there's bullets, that thing's moving, whatever, it's doing whatever its thing is, like it's a tank or a little robot or something. Like super easy to follow. All of the enemy sprites, I mean there's lots of the same ones, but each enemy is like unique and pretty looking, like just actually a surprisingly high level of polish for a game that you are intentionally not paying close attention to the detail on anything because looking at something too long would mean something else killing you.
Right, absolutely. And one thing that I noticed, well, actually, so one thing that I definitely noticed was that a lot of the times, like like you said, there are bad guys that are clearly bad guys, but anything that is shot at you, right? So like most of the bad guys, they move kind of slowly, and the bosses, they have their own patterns and all that fun stuff. But anything that's shot at you or moves quickly, that's like I guess what we would call an inanimate object, it flashes, you know? So like the little bullets that they shoot are flashing like rainbow colors, you know?
Yeah. Hey, I'm coming.
Yeah, it's this is bad. And then the even the like whatever, like fireballs and things like that have that kind of like flashy glow to them. So it's like it does draw your eye more quickly and immediately to like this thing that typically moves faster or in a way that an enemy can't. Because like most of the enemies, they move linearly across the earth. So it's like this thing actually has like full two-dimensional movement. So you need to be paying more attention to it. And they do that by actually making it flash, which is I thought very, very nice, you know?
Yeah, and it's those flashy bullets are like a little bit slower.
Hmm.
A lot of enemies actually don't have projectile weapons at all. Like I noticed in the first level, the enemies that come from the sides of the screen, if you jump over them, they will just continue on their path and
Yeah.
just run right off the edge of the screen.
So and then that immediately then begs the question: it's like, were they trying to hurt you, or are they just like rage demons that just are like running, just running? And as long as you just like get out of the way, then they're just kind of like, oh man, I wasn't trying to hurt you. I got nothing against you. I just need to run, you know?
Or you really are the last person on Earth, and they're just like they're not even looking for you.
And I'll tell you what, man, if you are the last person on Earth in this one, I do think that it's actually like more of a righteous path for you to just let humanity go than to kill a whole bunch of aliens and then let humanity go because you can't reproduce asexually. But I digress. On the first level, and this is something I can't remember. So I played this through. So in the option mode, you can pick how many lives that you start with, right? Or
Right.
rests, as they say.
Yeah, what the hell was up with that?
I don't know, man. I guess they didn't want to like be like, you're dying, right? A lot, right? Or
All the time. Just so much death.
um, yeah. So I immediately upped it to the maximum number of rests the game would allow me to have, and then brought it down to the lowest level of difficulty the game would allow me to have.
Same and same.
Yes, because I didn't. Why wouldn't you? I mean, I'm not. I don't judge my self-worth on my ability to play this game. So I wanted to have a good time. And I was pretty confident. I'm like, I remember old games and I remember how hard they could get. I don't want none of that. So one of the things that I noticed is in the first level, did you see those little dog monsters?
Oh
Like,
my god.
what's that? Okay, right? Like, so I'm just like sitting there fooling around, and there's like a dog like eating out the garbage as they do, and then the dog looks up at you with like crazy demon face. And I was like, bah. Like,
Yeah. Now that is probably the only graphic in the game, or it's certainly the only one I could think of where I was like, why is that?
So here's why it and I didn't do any of the legwork I should have done on this, but
I love our dedication to research on this program.
yeah, no, not. I mean, you do infinitely more research than I do, and I think you've looked up like 3 things. So
That's 3 too many as far as you're concerned.
it's 3 over 0, man, still undefined. But no, I'm pretty confident, if I remember correctly, that on the harder difficulties, those things do come after you.
Oh.
Yeah. So like,
I mean, we both took the coward's way out, so we'll never know for sure.
exactly, unless somebody, like calls us up and says, like, oh, hey, well, actually, but as I've said before, and I'll say it again, I don't care to get well actually.
Yeah.
But
no thanks.
But no, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, because okay, and then this bears on this particular thing. When I was younger, not only did I played this game a fair amount, but I almost exclusively played it with Game Genie with
Mm,
an infinite number of lives, and that changes your play style a little bit. Uh,
so much.
but yeah, so if I remember correctly, when I was younger, I consistently played this on hard mode because there was literally at that point no loss condition. And I'm confident that I remember those dogs coming after me because I was really prepared for it, and then they just kept staring at me, and I kept staring at them, and then I just went about my day.
I mean, to be fair, the way they stare at you is itself pretty haunting and threatening. So,
It is.
I mean, it's
Yes.
possible that like 10-year-old you just perceived the threatening stare as them coming after you.
No, that's possible. I mean, I did play this game a lot, so it might have been that one time I played it when I had like a fever or something, like when I was sick. And then I just had like fever dreams about like the dogs coming after me. I mean, that's not beyond the realm of possible.
Yeah. So the one other thing I'll say about the visuals is, and I mean, feel free to contribute other things, but this is the one other thing that really stood out to me, which is when the bosses especially, they the designers were like shameless in like the best way, because nothing about this game makes any damn sense. The levels make no damn sense. The weapons are insane. The monsters are all insane. But the bosses really stand out as them just being like, yeah, no creature like this could ever possibly exist, but literally who cares? Because it's cool looking. We can put a big glowy red spot on it where you're supposed to shoot it, which not every boss had, because some of them you could just shoot literally anywhere, and it was nice that they kind of mix that up. But it just like I loved how few were given about the realism in any of the design, because it made every boss and even individual monsters feel like interesting and like worth paying attention to.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I did want to touch on this is that the enemy models were incredibly varied, especially considering some of the games that we've seen where there's like 5 bad guys and then a whole bunch of palette swaps.
Yeah.
Like every bad guy felt unique and interesting to fight, especially the bosses. And like you said, physics just right out the window, But because of that, it gave you a lot of interesting gameplay opportunities to, for example, the one. First of all, I do just want to say that your grip strength in this game is unbelievable.
It's so unbelievable. The part where you're hanging onto the helicopter, they made no effort to make it look like you are like your hand is hooked over it.
Nope.
Like you are palming it with the flat of your hand, which means you're
dig
like
my toes into the missiles. Totally dig their fingers into the mist. Don't you get it? You shouldn't be that strong.
Well, but I think if you looked carefully, you would see that his palm is flat against it the way you would like hold like a pizza pie up over your head if you were like a stereotype, which to me says that you're actually using some kind of like squid-like suction to like vacuum seal your hand to it. Especially when you consider anything you're hanging off of, you still get your full jump off of.
Yes.
So you are, I guess, pulling yourself up into a jump
With one arm.
Right. While carrying a gigantic gun with infinity bullets. Actually, 2 gigantic guns.
Which means it's infinitely heavy. So that means that the real problem is the singularity caused by your infinitely massive weapon.
Yeah, and see, these are all things the designers clearly were like, yeah, it doesn't have to make sense. It's more fun if it doesn't make sense. But they weren't trying to make it silly, right? It's not Duke Nukem.
Yeah.
It's just like, what if we designed a game for 12-year-olds as if we were 12-year-olds?
Right.
Like all of this game design work was probably done on like in a spiral notebook, sitting at a little wooden desk.
No, absolutely. So one of the bad guys that you fight is the one where you start off hanging over him, and he's got like this little like twirly bit that you grab onto and shoot at him, and then he comes back as you're like climbing a wall, right? And like that whole situation, as we just said, is just ridiculous on top of ridiculous. But the getting to fight a bad guy that was like moving close and away from you over a pit of spikes while his drills slammed into a wall and you had to shoot at the red spot as it came near you. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, totally.
Despite the fact that there is no reality in which that's even remotely physically possible, or the boss that's, I guess, a living ship, or maybe you just have to, maybe there are just a bunch of bad guys on the ship. I don't know. But I thought it was very, and this is less gameplay visuals and more just like, I guess, over the top, not silly, but just very over the top, ridiculously machismo. Like
you've got to be talking about the missiles.
Yep. When you're jumping from missile to missile that are being fired at this thing while also shooting at it with your infinity gun, with your infinity pistol to try to defeat it. That's an 80s childhood right there, right? I mean, like,
well, and what makes that so this actually bears on something else with the visuals I wanted to mention, but what makes those things spectacular is that they are, from a gameplay mechanics standpoint, they're delivered in a very like good linear way, right? So when you fight the spinny thing that you like hang onto its arm, it's like, oh hey, this thing, like, you got to shoot it in the middle, and then it like flies away, and then it comes back, and it's like, oh, remember before how you learned how to climb walls with things not flying at you? Now there's a thing flying at you, and you need to shoot it, but you can't shoot while you're climbing, so you got to move, shoot, shoot and move, right? But it's like, so you learn those things in like a really safe environment, but then if you actually analyze the situation, it's completely like banana pants.
Oh yeah.
And then with the missile thing, like, you're hanging off of the missile, well, you're palming the missile on the bottom of the helicopter, and it's like, oh, okay, so I'm not really going to have total control over where I am right now because I'm holding onto the helicopter, and there's crap like flying at me, and I got to shoot it. But I can jump, and I can kind of move around a little bit. Like, I have some control, and then it fires the missile, which already, like, as an adult, I was just like, what? But I'm too busy enjoying it to care.
Oh yeah.
So then when it gets blown up and you have to like jump to the other missile, and then all of these missiles start coming and you're like jumping between them, I was like, this is really good level design. Like, I understand exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, but it's so absurd.
Oh yeah, no. So from a game design standpoint, which we'll get into, it's brilliant. It's very well done, especially for how over the top ridiculous it is. From a visual standpoint, and just from a conceptual standpoint, it is just like, I think you summed it up perfectly as banana pants. But especially because I didn't realize it until you said the fact that, like, you can't shoot while you're climbing. Yeah, okay, that makes sense. But you can shoot while you're jumping. Now, there's a term in dance called spotting. Are you familiar with that?
I know exactly what you're going to say, and I'm so excited. We're picking up on these same ridiculous things.
So spotting in dance is when you're spinning, you continue to try to look forward for as long as you can, and then you turn your head around, and it helps prevent you from getting dizzy. Now, when you jump in this game, you tuck into a nice little ball and do like 17
several front flips. Yes.
Yeah, like 17 front flips. You do front flips until you land always on your feet, no matter what distance you've fallen. So the number of front flips is a function of distance fallen, not like how many, whatever. But during that time, if you're shooting your gun, you shoot with perfect accuracy in the exact same direction. So that means that as your body is twisting and twirling around your gun, you're managing to re-aim your weapon at the exact same point, which is that's why you're humanity's last defense, is because you basically have superpowers, right?
Well, and you can even, so while you are jumping, you can also change the orientation of your firing while flipping forward.
Yep.
So, but again, to make that realistic would be boring.
Exactly.
Like, it would be so boring, but the visual is so striking. Like, how am I doing that? But it's like I'm compelled to ask how and why, but I don't actually like want an answer.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so my shoulder dislocates while I'm spinning and it stays stationary and my body spins like, and I'm like a yo-yo on an axis. Like that's a perfectly acceptable explanation.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that, like I said, like from a visual standpoint, it's just like what the hell, man. But like from a gameplay standpoint, it's amazing. There's one other thing on the visuals I did want to touch on. So and it kind of is tangential to the uh, enemy design. So the enemy design I thought was just amazing because, like I said, it's very varied. You don't ever feel at any point you're like, oh, this again. Like, oh, it's just another one of these guys. Like, I was excited to continue to progress through this very difficult game, if for no other reason than I wanted to see what the next thing they threw at me was, like what it looked like. So the two bosses that I thought were that stuck out the most in my mind was the just shameless Terminator ripoff. I got
the two robot things.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know why I got a kick out of that because it's like, hey man, you ever wanted to fight Terminator? How about two of them, and then a third really big one? Cool, we're good here. All right, moving on. Like it was almost like they were like legally obligated to have that in there. And I'm actually wondering like if they had to pay for it or anything. But I was just kind of like, that was neat. So I enjoyed that, and then I also enjoyed the fact that on the final stage, which I did not get to, I did have to look up online, but on the final stage, how you fight your way through an alien body. So each of the mini bosses, all the way up to the final boss that you fight, is like based off of a human organ. I thought that was really clever.
Well, and if I understood the tiny bit of research I did correctly, all of those bosses came from, or most of them came from earlier Contra games.
Oh, did they?
So this is what I read. So they not only were they able to reuse some of what they did before, which puts like some interesting lore into this otherwise loreless universe. But they combined it, as you say, in a really smart way. Like, because then you fight a brain. So like you work up to the brain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember kind of getting into, one of those arguments that just is so unbelievably important when you're younger. And then you look back on it and you're like, what, who cares? But it was whether or not, so you fight a kidney first, right? And then, and I think it's after that you fight a heart. And then you fight like this like big, like weird looking thing that like semi crawls along the ground,
Yeah.
That whether that was a liver or a stomach, I almost got into a physical altercation. And I mean, I still don't know. Like, I don't know if there's an answer to that, but yeah, that was, I definitely remembered that when I saw that, and I was like, oh man, I really got angry about that because it's obviously a stomach. And
I'm gonna need to look up a picture of this later because I don't have a clear enough mental image to take a stand on this, and you seem pretty passionate.
Yeah, no. It's gonna be great because the next time we're together and like we're like working through a kung fu form, it's gonna be like, we have to spar for a little bit because that's a stomach, right?
I was just imagining waking up with like the knife up against my throat, like, which was it, Lions? Is it a liver or stomach?
It's like whatever I have to say to make you go away.
So here's what I have to say, and I think this is actually my last thing about visuals. My notes on visuals are surprisingly sparse. I was really lame about that part. But the Terminator boss, the thing that I found so striking about that, and tell me if you agree with this, but the reason that particular boss stands out in my mind as being such an exemplar of visuals in this game is because you enter this little room and there's enough information from the level you just went through and in the way the room is shaped that you immediately are like, I can climb on the wall, I can hang from the ceiling.
Yep.
And you need to do both of those things to defeat these monsters because you cannot possibly deal with them exclusively on the ground.
Right.
So there's a lot of very useful information conveyed very quickly. There's two of them. And what I've found visually interesting about this part of the game is this is the one part of the game where I mean, granted, I had to do the same thing as you and like kind of watch the last level and not so much live it, and the fifth level for that matter. But the thing that I found very interesting about that particular boss is you blow them up and then their legs like blow off,
Mhm.
and then their upper torso like freaks out and moves considerably faster, but with less total mobility, which is kind of scary.
Yep.
And then when you kill the other one, or you killed the both of them, you're like, haha, victory. The fingers
Mhm.
from the background, the giant robot fingers that like grab the wall and rip it open, and then there's like a huge, just the upper body version of the two robots you just fought, and you have to now deal with this. Like that, I actually kind of like hunched back in my seat, like, oh, gee, like,
Yeah. Oh my god.
this guy.
Yeah.
And
Oh
then
yeah.
you when you finally beat that one, the wall, like he's been holding the wall open and it crushes on him and his head gets cut off.
Mhm.
I was like, how is this interaction with this robot by far the most violent part of this game? Like you're killing life forms left and right, but this robot interaction felt way more visceral.
Yeah, no, and actually that leads for me very nicely into the sound effects. The boss intro music I thought was amazing. Um because it's very kind of like light, and then it kind of like leads into like a much heavier like music, but it starts off with like almost like a do 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 do, like it's not that, but it's
Yeah, it's like light chimes kind of thing.
exactly, and it's like dun 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 like that. Like so, like when you hear that like little do 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 do, and then like you just see the one clawed hand like pierce the thing, and you're like, what? And then like the other one comes in, and you're like, no, and then it's like
I
dun dun
thought
dun.
that
You're like,
was
oh
the
god,
boss.
yeah. I don't know why. I just thought that the way they married the visuals to the sound effects, to the music of the boss intro, did a great job building tension in that one moment like you said, in a game where you're literally just dropping things left and right, in a game that's all about empowerment. When they introduced the bosses, I thought they did a great job of making you feel small, so it's like, hey, yeah, you are, jumping from missiles and like doing backflips off of your bike and landing on it, and which we didn't talk about that I feel like should be mentioned. Like you're doing all of these things, but all that being said, there are still things in this verse that are way bigger than you, and you should absolutely like sit up and take notice.
Yeah, and the fact that you mentioned that music, I think, is significant because my feelings about the music, other than that music, are there is music,
Yes, I
and
agree. I could
and
not
you
tell
can
you anything about it.
and you can almost never hear it because there's just non-stop bullets or missiles firing, the
Hmm.
noise that it makes when something takes damage or dies, and the sound of you dying. So it's just
Oh yes.
non-stop sound effects. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Like I think that's expected in a game like this. I mean, I think we felt the same way, in any space-faring bullet hell game. But it did make me notice a couple of times, like when I first got to the missile part and I was putting together like, oh, I need to shoot those thingies and that'll make the shield go away. And I
Mhm.
did actually stop firing for a second. All I could think about the music was this music is weirdly upbeat. But then the more I kind of thought about it, I was like, oh, because I'm not afraid, right?
Mm,
Like I'm Space Rambo. Like
right.
I'm blonde Rambo with two guns who's shooting aliens like it ain't no thing.
Yep.
I'm not afraid. This is not a problem for me. And so that actually, like, even though the music is forgettable if you can even hear it, it conveys exactly the emotion it's supposed to convey, which then is perfectly juxtaposed against, no, now you need to be afraid. This thing is scary,
Right.
right?
This
And
is
then big cool boss monster.
so like now I'm picturing, because I wouldn't have even thought of that without you mentioning it, but I like that idea that the music is your character's like interpretation of the severity of things that's happening. So now my headcanon is that the music is what your character's like humming to himself, like as he's going through and just like dropping aliens left and right, where he's just kind of like, hmm, 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 hmm. like, like humming in his own little theme song, and then all of a sudden, like this big thing, and he's like, no, 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 no. Like, and then, like, so that's why like the music gets more serious. And it was funny because when you said like, because to be honest, I couldn't tell you any of the music because I did focus on the sound effects because I thought that those were unique and interesting, but the music I couldn't tell you what. And so when you said like, oh yeah, the music was strangely upbeat, I was like, now what does the music sound like? And then I pictured like you stop firing and it's like Japanese teen pop. I just never noticed it.
It's not quite full on like J-pop, K-pop, but I mean, it's very like think like the first stage of Gradius or like any kind of generic happy like space sci-fi music. It's basically that, just
Yeah.
kind of all the time.
That, yeah, no, I could definitely like I can almost hear it, but now it's just all of it's being pushed away for J-pop. I'm kind of okay with that. In fact, because the internet houses everything. I'm sure you'd be able to find it, but I kind of want to just play this game with all of the music redubbed over with that. So
I mean,
life goals, you know.
Arguably, as long as the correct emotions are conveyed to the player, I'd say that that's not even necessarily like a negative change. Like,
No.
it's just, yeah, it's fine. It's totally fine.
I did like the different weapon sound effects. I thought that was very kind of key and important because, as we've mentioned before, is in bullet hell games, you're kind of in sensory overload. So
yes.
you you need all of the they need to be giving you all the information that they can, and considering that from a tactile standpoint, you're holding the controller, so that one's kind of gone. You've got eyes and ears, and hopefully you're not smelling or tasting anything.
Yeah.
Other than maybe copper from like from all of the visuals. But no, I thought that the guns making a different sound effect was a nice touch because especially for the difference between cluster and homing weapons, because those look very similar, but the only thing that's different is like the color, but they make a very distinctly different sound effect, so
Yeah.
the moment that I fired it, like even if I was just like looking around the screen at the million of other things going on, I could tell you just by hearing what kind of weapon I had equipped. So I thought that was kind of a nice touch.
Yeah, and most enemies are killed with one hit from virtually every different weapon, but there are, I don't know, maybe structures is the right word, like a little turret will pop out or some kind of small fortification that takes like a few hits.
Right.
And it makes like a really kind of piercing like shriek noise.
Yeah.
Not like an animal or something shrieking in pain, but it's like a very clear this thing is going to take multiple hits noise. And I know that that's consistent across games of this genre because that information needs to be communicated to you. No, your bullets didn't just pass through it. No, you're not hitting a solid object that's impossible for you to destroy. You need to keep shooting this thing. And anything that makes that noise, you keep shooting until it stops making that damn noise.
Yep. And that actually is true too of the whatever I guess what would it be called? The helicarrier that you're fighting at one point, where apparently a barrage of missiles doesn't get the job done, but only you and your infinity pistol does. When you're underneath it, there were definitely some things that are shooting at you that I am fairly confident, if given enough skill, you could probably destroy. Like there were those little lasers that shoot down at you, and when you shoot at them, it makes that same sound effect. And I immediately thought, like, I could probably kill this thing. And I was like, but man, it's easier to just kind of like dodge around it. I was like, I'm pretty sure that this thing would blow up if I kept shooting at it. So that was kind of a nice touch. And if I remember correctly, from again when I was playing with Game Genie, they can be destroyed. And the way I used to do it was basically just because every time you spawn, you get a new bomb. So I would just jump at it, activate my bomb, and die. And then jump at it, and activate my bomb, and die. And
my life is meaningless.
I do think they blow up eventually.
Yeah, I know. Right before you do that little part of that stage, you can get the flamethrower weapon,
Hmm.
which I think is the easiest way to deal
Yes.
with
Yeah,
those.
you're right. Yeah. And do you have anything else on sound effects?
There are sound effects. I mean, they serve the visuals really well, which I think is because I mean, if you actually listen, like if you went, on some website and you were like, I'm going to download all the sound effects for Contra 3, and you listen to them one by one, you'd be like, these either sound horrible or they don't make sense or they're not visually or they don't match what I would expect, visually, but that's not their purpose. Their purpose is we are giving you way too much visual information. We need to supplement that, or in some cases, just completely replace it with auditory information, and they do that incredibly well.
I,
Like,
I, yeah.
I mean, we're only two things into this, and it's just like I have basically nothing bad to say about the graphics or the audio sound, sound effects slash music ish.
Yes, music adjacent, and yeah, no, I agree with both. The reason why I mentioned is because the flamethrower thing does lead us into gameplay, and it wasn't until I died horribly the 15th time that I realized that the power ups aren't random; they're always the same.
Correct.
And and right when I realized that, I was like, "Oh, you're suggesting which weapon I should use," and that was like pull back the curtain, mind just blown, like that whole thing. Because I was just kind of like, "Oh," so whenever like they would drop a weapon, I'd be like, "Okay, all right, now let's see if you're right." And there were sometimes when I disagreed, where I was just kind of like, "No, I prefer this weapon." But like a great example of it would be right before you go and fight the Terminators 2. Um, right before you fight them, it almost forces you to get the homing upgrade because
Yes,
you pass
because
through a
that
small.
room without the homing upgrade, oh my god.
Yeah, no, it's a hot mess. But you pass through a hallway that is almost impossible for you to jump, and you can get the power up, and it's almost impossible for you to jump over it. And if you're firing like a madman, which you almost certainly are, you're gonna make the thing drop the power up. And I was just kind of like, oh yeah, homing upgrade. And then when I fought that, I was just kind of like, oh, thank God. And I just like holed up in the corner and just kind of fired wildly in like that direction and just hoped that the bullets took care of the problem for me.
Yeah, and so here's an interesting kind of bit of inside baseball for you. So if you ever look up an FAQ or a tutorial, or if you ask your friend whose uncle worked at Nintendo about the original Contra, they will tell you that one of the first upgrades, if not the first upgrade you can get, is the spread gun.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no reason in the original Contra to ever use any other gun, literally ever. It is the best weapon you can possibly have.
In every situation.
Yes, and there's only like one or two other times in the entire game you can get it. Right. So the fact that they're not only giving you lots of upgrades so you can change, weapon power-ups all the time, and you can carry two, so you could have like your favorite and the one that the game thinks you should have.
Right.
So like you have some options, but they're actually giving you tools at the time they're maybe expecting you to use them, instead of saying, oh no, you need to pick the one that works the best for you and then don't lose it, otherwise you're screwed forever. Right, which makes the game harder, maybe more interesting in some ways, but I think less fun.
Yes. No, and that's the thing is I think that we the Imperial we need to more regularly distinguish between hard and punishing games, because
Definitely.
because there are a game's difficulty does not make it like controller breaking, and I think like one of the biggest things and this game, like many of its kind, is at fault at it to a degree, is like iteration time, is if from when you get got to when you get a chance to try what done got you again needs to be super tight. In this game, I actually do think that it's not as at fault as many games that are around the same age are, in the sense that when you die, you literally immediately get to try what killed you again, because you just respawn like right where you were, you know?
Yeah, you are dead the length of the death animation.
Correct. But that being said, once you lose all of the lives, you then get kicked back to like some point, you know, like I think there's like normally one or two um save points like in the
Yeah,
level.
checkpoints. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean so yeah, there's a huge difference between you know, difficulty and punishing. And I completely forgot where I was going with that. So
There's a on my one of my favorite George Carlin albums called Back in Town. He gets to the end of this segment, which he announces before he starts, like, "Oh, this is something new. Like I've been wanting to try out, and so you're the unlucky people who have to hear like this unfinished material." And then when he gets to the end of it, he literally says, "I have no ending for this bit, so I will take a small bow." And then like there's no segue. He just like hard cuts into the next part of his bit.
like, yep, that's all I got. But yeah, no, gameplay. Yeah, I definitely, like I said, so to touch then again on the Game Genie and my own personal nostalgia levels, it is amazing to me. First of all, I think I am actually better at this game now than I was when I was younger, you know, just because, like I said, man, basically when I played as a kid, I just remember being a bomb machine, you know, like I would just get as close to the thing that I could and then set off my bomb and then just die. And especially the the what is it, the winged big bad in level 6. It's right before you fight the brain. It's what I assume is the spinal cord, or supposed to represent the spinal cord.
Yeah.
That thing, that's way easier to beat with infinite lives, I can tell you that right now. Because
Well, and the scary teleport thing it does, like I remember I was watching it because I didn't get that far, but I
Right.
was watching it and I was just like, holy hell. Like like this is haunting. I mean, like I'm sure like if I'd had the controller in my hand, that would have been another part where I would have been like actually like put off my guard.
yeah, no, it does a great job, like occasionally just like being like, hey, be unsettled, and you're like, oh, you know,
Okay.
whatever you say, man, whatever you say. But yeah, no, I thought what was it? Oh, that was the thing. That's what I wanted to touch on. Is so 2 weapons, right?
Mm.
Completely forgot about that the whole game. Yep. It wasn't until I went to the video. And okay, so the reason why is when I looked at it, is I was like, well, it's for player 1 and player 2, and I don't have a player 2, so whatever. And it wasn't until I like,
That's a reasonable mistake.
yeah, and so it wasn't until I was seeing the thing immediately right when I saw that there was like a letter in both of the things. I was like, oh, right.
Yeah, and they're even more forgiving because you only lose the weapon you had equipped when you die,
Yeah.
which is pretty generous.
Oh yeah, no, because I remember occasionally when I would play without the Game Genie, like there is definitely, if you're really quick about it, a way to switch to your bad weapon if you are in a situation where you know you're about to die. Like normally it's when you like, you know, duff a jump or something like that. You know,
Right.
you can very quickly be like, no, and which I imagine is just kind of like you're like no, and you just like holster your other weapon. You like pull the other one out, like this is the one I want to fall on, and then you hit the ground and it's, you know, shatters, and then you come back from that somehow. And then another fun headcanon that you can do with this is very similar to some other games. Is every time you die, you could assume that it's your like son or progeny comes to like finish the mission, and at one point I like entertained that, and it breaks down in some areas because
Yes.
yeah. Well, especially once when you're like riding a motorcycle and you're like, that doesn't really make any sense. But I like the idea behind it, especially if it's like every time, let's just say when you get your rest, right? Because you're just resting, right? You just it's the breathing bodies in DBZ, right? You're just resting. It's fine. You're just all tuckered out. So once you run out of rests and you're going, you use a continue. If that was your son or whatever, right? Then that would make more sense. But then also too, it would mean that like the aliens invaded in AD 20XD6, right? And then it might have taken you like generations to actually rid the alien threat, which I kind of like the idea of. It doesn't work out perfectly, but
It could be like that one episode of Doctor Who where it is generations, but because they're clones that are born like fully grown, they're
Ooh, I
only
like
like
that.
minutes apart.
Yes, yes. No, I like the actually that would make a whole lot more sense. What if you are a clone?
Well, I mean, based on the frequency with which you die, I'd say you almost have to be.
Yes.
The the man who, holds up the champagne or, gets the girl or whatever the hell like the stupid little party at the end is, like that is not the guy who started that mission.
No, no, not at all. What if this? I'm just thinking of this now, so it's probably not as well thought out as I'd like it to be. But what if? Okay, what if it's like the aliens are getting ready to invade Earth, right? So what if you're an alien clone, right? And
Oh,
they're just
this
testing
is
their
their
defense.
danger room.
What?
This is like
Yeah.
their danger room.
Yep. Yeah.
That's the kind of crazy backstory that you could put in the booklet that went with this game because it's like why not? Like
Yeah.
it changes nothing about the gameplay.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I think, honestly, as we've been doing these episodes, that I've enjoyed the most is, like you look at them without the nostalgia goggles. So you check out the graphics, the gameplay, and see how it measures up to current games. That's all very enjoyable. But the trying to come up with narratives when there are none in these games is, I think, one of the things that I enjoy the most because so many of them are such blank slates.
I can't wait till we eventually play something like Tetris.
I think that with Tetris, I think I saw something where it just said like it's very Buddhist in like its philosophy because no matter how hard you work for something, it eventually all disappears and life is impermanent and yeah.
Is that Buddhist or is that like a nihilist?
I don't know, man. It's somewhere in there, but basically Tetris is a digital mandala painting.
Okay. Yeah, I mean I can't believe we're doing this. If you are approaching it with a negative outlook, as in like no matter what I do with my life, we're all gonna die, then it would, I guess, be a little bit more nihilist. Like life is meaningless no matter how good you are or how hard you try. If it's appreciating the beauty of the artwork, even if that is a temporary thing, that I could see as being a little more Buddhist.
No, I can't remember where I heard it the first time, but just somebody said, and it might have been in reference to Tetris, but I mean, it fits for any number of Tetris-esque games where it's just like, no, it's a great corollary for life. It just gets harder and harder until you die. And
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, kind of,
Well, I mean, see, now we're definitely dipping back into nihilism because
Oh,
it's
yeah,
like
that's nihilistic.
because when you get to the later levels where everything's faster and you're like, man, I feel like this used to be easier. Like things didn't used to be this hard. Like that's like as your body's breaking down and your mind is slipping away from you.
And that's when like, so you're playing, you're like, no, this I used to be able to do this, now I can't do it anymore, and somebody just like puts their hand on your shoulder and says like, it's still level 1. and then like that's when it cuts away. Yeah, that's the heartbreaking Shyamalan-esque ending to that particular story.
Dude, our Dr. Mario episode or whatever is going to be like the most depressing game critique.
Oh yes. We need to get that one on the list. I'm excited about that. We should spend like 10 minutes on visuals, 10 minutes on music, 10 minutes on gameplay, and then the philosophy of Doctor really Mario.
Dr. Mario, when did you have time to get that PhD?
His doctorate's in art history, I'm pretty sure.
And it's honorary. um, so there's something on the mechanics that I kind of wanted to get your opinion on because once this occurred to me, I can't unsee it.
Mm-hmm.
So the whole game's only 6 levels.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2 levels that do the bizarre top-down thing, which is so mind-bogglingly annoying. Like those levels are short, but the gameplay of them I just found very not fun. Like they're not that much harder. I wouldn't actually say they are harder than the other levels, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the shift. And it's not that I couldn't even deal with the top down. It's I don't like it in this game. But the thing about the mechanics that really stood out to me once I noticed it is the amount of throwaway mechanics. Like in the first level, you ride in a tank. Never happens again.
Nope.
In that one level where you're fighting the boss, like while you're climbing a wall, never do that again. And then there's the boss where you fight where you're jumping from missile to missile. Never do anything like that again. Like,
which I was kind of happy about though, because that was pretty.
But I mean, they're like you're on the motorcycle. There's a one stage where things are moving and you don't have control over the speed that the stage is scrolling. Like there's just a ton of things that like you have the tools to deal with this new situation, but anything you learned in that situation, like it's useless knowledge.
Yeah, that's interesting. So it is kind of differences in kind to run amok, you know. The only counter argument I could possibly give for that, which is that the idea that behind most of these games is that like they were aimed at kids that didn't have the means by which to purchase new games, so the game was intended to be played like 100,000 times, right? So the idea is, it's like, do you like the biking bit? Well, then there's a biking bit, but it's like, so we can only make the game 6 stages long. Let's make a whole bunch of different stuff in there, so that way we can hit like the broadest appeal possible. And personally, I actually enjoyed the top-down stages. Like, I wouldn't want to play them for too long, especially because after I started playing one of them for a little bit, I started to get a little motion sick. Because it's level 5, I think, where there are things that can force you to spin, like you're not in control of your own spinning. I didn't like that, because all of a sudden I was just kind of like, oh god, like I just. But yeah, I actually kind of thought it was an interesting shift. The only thing I didn't really like about the top-down stages was the difference in kind was so stark. And the game is so unforgiving with death. Like, so I in the sense that, once you lose a life like that, you can't lose lives. You're going to need those lives later. So with that being said, I didn't care for that bit when all of a sudden I just lost a life. And I was like, I don't really feel like I should have lost that one. But aside from that, I thought it was an interesting, at least attempt or experiment to try to vary it up,
Like, yeah. And I guess I'm not down on this. Like it didn't detract from my enjoyment. It's more like it's almost a compliment to the level design that most of the time they do an incredibly good job of introducing you to things in a safe space, so that when they combine a bunch of things at once, you know what to do. And yet they could still include throwaway mechanics that they're like, yeah, you don't really worry about this one because you're never going to do this again. Or if you're going to try and play through the game and get like a higher score, you'll have to remember how to do this when you get here again, but we're never going to show this to you again in the same game. Right. So I know you do the top-down thing twice, but like you're only on the bike once. You only hang from the missiles once. The crawly or the climby like hand over hand thing you do in the second half of the first stage, like you only do that. I mean, you kind of see it in the last stage, but it's not a big challenge like it is in the first stage because of the fire being there.
Right.
So it's just like there's all these really excellent examples of like learn A, learn B, learn C, now deal with A, B, and C all at the same time. And then it's like learn Q, learn F, and learn J. And now just forget those letters.
And now you don't need to do that anymore. Another weird one was the, I think since stage 2, the like flying aliens that actually like pick you up,
I must have shot them before I allowed them to do that to me.
Well, la-di-da, Rambo.
Well, I'm just saying, I can't think of a single enemy that interacted with me that didn't kill me when it touched me.
Yeah, that was the thing, is that, this was I think the only one, was because, like it touched me. I was like, well, whatever. And then all of a sudden, like, I realized I didn't die immediately, that I was starting to be lifted off the screen. And I shot that thing in the head, and then it dropped me. And I was able to like grab back onto the thing, which again, to touch on the insanity of what I just said. So There is there's a creature in the game that instead of just mauling you to death the minute it touches you, it decides to grab you and fly you up high enough that you die. Because that's the thing, is that you die before it drops you, right?
Right. Yeah, because the edges of the screen kill you sometimes.
Exactly. So that means that it flew you up so high that the mere altitude killed you. So that's crazy. But then if you shoot it in the head before it manages to do that, you can then fall several feet. I'm going to say at least 20 feet, and then grab onto with one arm and while holding an infinitely heavy gun, and you do not dislocate your shoulder, which I thought was pretty neat.
Dude's in good shape.
Yeah,
He's,
man.
he's not the bad dudes, but he's a bad dude.
He is a bad dude. I would not want to be punched in the face by somebody who could lift infinitely heavy things, because I'm pretty sure that's like the stuff that Superman does, you know?
Agreed.
Like, I think there was one time where I saw they were like, well, how strong is Superman? It's like, well, at one point, he and this other person held a book with an infinite number of pages, which means that it's infinitely heavy. But, you know, it's like you can say he was holding it with somebody else's help. But the thing is, this other person has a limit to their strength, which means that Superman is holding the rest. So what's infinity minus a discrete number? It's still infinity. So he is infinitely strong. And I just liked that like mathematical argument.
Yeah, I'm sure you've seen and maybe even own some of those like the science of comic books kind of things. And I mean obviously they can't hold up to like deep scrutiny.
Right.
But I do like when they make an effort like that where they're like, yeah, if you go 5 or 6 steps into the math, we'll go along for the ride with you, but after that it's a comic book.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of like the thing, because I think at one point, you know, for the Superman thing, Superman gets because Jimmy Olsen has like his signal watch or something, and so he activates it. And the thing is that the reason why it works is because Superman can hear supersonic stuff. You know, Superman's on a planet orbiting Vega at the time that the goes off, and he still manages to get back in about 10 minutes. So not only is he traveling several times the speed of light in order to get back in that amount of time, but also he heard sound through space, which I think is pretty neat. So this isn't
very strong ears.
Yeah. This isn't that bad, because I mean, this is theoretically, aside from the infinitely heavy gun, possible, like sort of, but yeah, no, things like that. To be 100% on this, it's not immersion breaking, and that's the important thing. Is that, you know, like, it's all so like on theme that you're just kind of like, no, this is totally fine. It's not until you like put the controller down and think about it later till you're like, that was stupid.
Well, and the fact that you can think about, haha, that's stupid, and then still have like literally no problem going back and like playing again or seeing those exact same things. I don't think that's just like a silly kid thing. Like, I think that's just a well-delivered piece of media, whether it's a video game or a movie or a comic book. Like, you understand the rules of the universe, and no matter how stupid they are, you are like, yeah, these are just the rules of this universe. He has really, really strong palm muscles.
And I think that also too, what supports it is that the game is so unwavering in its tone. Now, its tone is over the top action insanity, you know. It's not like this isn't a think piece, you know. But that being said, because it doesn't waver from that tone, you know, like it's very much about like over the top action, and occasionally just dips a little bit into like fear, just to like remind you that you're not a god, you know.
And this is supposed to be a stressful situation,
right? The fact that it does that is, I think, like personally what made me ignore a whole lot of it. I did have one. This barely relates, but I don't know why. I just got a huge kick out of it, and I wanted to share it. So, Rick and Morty, it's a great show.
You have my attention.
So at one point, you're fighting a bad guy. I think it's in the second stage, and it's like a blue kind of thing. It has a spotlight at the bottom, and it yeah. So it fires bombs at you, and if you just kind of huddle over on the side of the screen, they won't hit you. And then it starts firing people at you, people-esque aliens, right? And they all have like wings. And I was like, man, look at all these bird people coming out of this plane. And then I was like, bird person. And then I was just kind of like, excuse me, Contra man, I really feel that you should stop shooting at my ship. And like, then all of a sudden they were just all bird person. and I don't know why that tickled me. Was just like just hundreds of bird persons like just flooding out.
Just getting mowed down by Contra, man. I like that you just subtly pointed out that neither of us have any idea what the hero's name is.
Nope. No, not a clue. Contra man. Yeah, best guess, Contra man.
Hang on. What is the name of the hero in Contra?
It's probably something like Brock Strongo or Jake.
God, if it's
ripped Bobs.
If it's, I can't even say that with a straight face. If it's Brock,
Strongo,
I can't do it. If it was actually that, Strongo is way funnier. I can't. I'm finding nothing. Wait. Nope. Riser?
Sure. Like
maybe
Paul Reiser? Is he in Mad About You? Like, I don't know, man.
Hang on. The original Contra and its sequels, Super Contra and Contra 3, The Alien Wars, are set in the 27th century and center around two commandos named Bill Reiser and, get this, Lance Bean.
I had Lance. But Bean.
That's you got to admit, that's a tiny bit immersion breaking.
That is Lance Bean, like
Bill and Lance.
Good old Bill and Lance. No, because they would have to change their names after the events of Contra, just because you can't have Bill and Lance who saved the world. You know, like what's that monument even going to look like?
Two bad dudes.
Yeah, so then the game Two Bad Dudes is just like a dramatization of the adventures of Lance and Bill.
Oh God. It's poisonous to think about those names and try and enjoy the game. I think I'm getting close to the end of my notes here.
So I had one other note, and this didn't deal with gameplay so much as, again, it was just like my own enjoyment of pointing out the ridiculousness of this game. So in the first level, and again, it just sets the tone, right? The first level right off the top sets the tone. It's like, hey man, it's you against the world, whatever. And so at one point you're standing on some of the rubble, and a human looking plane comes and firebombs the area and lights the entire world on fire to the point where there's immediately like magma spewing up out of the earth that you can shoot to death, by the way.
So there is some fire that shooting is the right solution.
Yeah, no, there are totally fireballs that you can shoot until they're not fireballs. So I remember seeing that and kind of like cocking my head and being like, aren't these guys supposed to be on my side? Like,
Yeah, no, it definitely looks like a World War II era, like Army green bomber.
Yeah, like a B-52 kind of. Yeah, and it fires something that I luckily have never been in a point in my life where I've extensively had to deal with napalm. But that being said, it sets the world on fire for a not insubstantial amount of time, which I was just kind of like, what did they fire at me? Why aren't we just covering the earth in this shit? Like, well, I'll just go underground and then just hit all of it with this, and then we'll just come back up later.
And everything will be fine, surely.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, that was my last note. Was I think the exact note reads, "Your own plane nukes you?" ? Then everything permafire. Period. was the note. I'm
I'm with you, because that is Gosh, is that the one time in the game there's even evidence that anyone else has survived until the little ending pseudo cinema? I mean, I guess somebody's flying the helicopter.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, it could be a cargo robot. Like you don't
it could
actually see a
be.
pilot.
That's true. And then, so yeah, because there's the B-52, there's the helicopter, which both could have been flown by cargo robots. Who knows? Or maybe the reason why the B-52 bombs you is because the aliens got a hold of it or whatever.
Ah,
But that being said, there actually, I would argue that there have to be several hundred helicopters because of the sheer volume of missiles that are shot at the ship that you jump between. I don't think one helicopter has that kind of payload.
well, they just fastened one of your guns to the bottom of the helicopter.
That's the one piece of alien tech we've managed to scrounge up is the one that makes infinite ammunition. I can get on board with that. I like that.
So before I ask you if you feel like it holds up, and you kind of alluded to this, but do you have a favorite weapon? Did you have something that like you kind of went against the game's wishes and you were like, no, this is the gun I'm going to use?
So I liked the spread homing though, man.
Oh God, homing all the way.
Yes, no. Whenever given the option, homing. I like the flamethrower. That was fine. Lasers gave
No,
no.
why even bother?
Right.
There's
no,
got to be
I
one
thought-
crap gun to make the other guns look good.
Oh yeah, no. Something had to juxtapose that. I actually feel like that I would have gotten more use out of a laser pointer than the actual lasers that they use. Like I was as disappointed in the laser gun as I was the first time I saw a laser gun, and all it did was just shoot light at people. I was like, that's not what I've been led to believe laser guns do. Yeah, no, lasers were worthless. Yeah, no, dude, homing all the way.
Yeah, homing all the way, and not just because, I mean, obviously, but it didn't. I didn't get the impression that they made you compromise on its kill power for the fact that it finds the thing it's going to kill for you.
Yes.
It's not like, oh, it's homing, but it's a lot weaker. It's like, no, it seemed pretty fine.
Yeah. No, I agree. Especially like you said, considering the fact that you can be facing away, directly away from the thing that you're trying to kill, and it will fire out, turn around, not hit you, and go back and kill the thing that you're trying to kill. That's pretty handy.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's not even like, oh, it kind of, like if your shot is sort of off target, then maybe. No, it will totally change direction
Yep.
mid-flight. Yeah, I didn't even know. I didn't even bother to recognize that the game was trying to give me the tool it thought I should be using because I was pretty confident that homing missiles was what I should be using because homing missiles.
Well, I mean, it'd be kind of like, if all of a sudden somebody says like, hey, man, you're going to go up against two bad dudes. So at first they're going to come at you high. So at first we're going to give you like a baseball bat, and then we're going to give you, like these brass knuckles. Okay, cool. And then we're going to give you a flamethrower. All right. But then we're going to want you to switch back to the brass knuckles. And it's like, wait,
Nope.
no, wait, what was that third one? The flame. I'm just going to hang on to that. And
if you try to take it away from me, I'll have a flamethrower.
now I'm just picturing like the person who's like running you through this, being like as you're strapping on the flamethrower, you're like, didn't think it through, did you? And then just yeah. But anyways,
Does it hold up?
Does it hold up? I absolutely think it does.
Yeah, absolutely. And considering I, one, am terrible at this game, and two, went into it thinking it was an entirely different game, I had a really, really good time playing it.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of fun. Really short cycle time in the sense, like in playtime, because like at one point I played, the first time I sat down to play it, I played 3 rounds of it, and I was like, that's enough. And I looked up, and it'd been like a half an hour, So I was like, oh, this is easily something that you could just sit down, play 10 minutes of, and then go back to life. So that's really nice. Very, very character design, interesting concepts, tonally appropriate, good gameplay, good mechanics. It's just a good game, man. It definitely holds up.
And, the one thing I don't think either of us mentioned specifically is I never felt like if I died that the game had like cheated.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's hard. Like, it's a hard game, not a punishing game, or at least not mostly. But, like, I think it'd be reasonable to recommend this to someone who's like, yeah, I like fast paced shooty kind of games, and it's like, oh, did you ever play Contra 3? Oh no, I missed that when I was a kid. You could still go play it now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I would completely recommend this to somebody, who was looking for a game like this to play. I'd be like, yeah, no, you should absolutely check out Contra 3. It totally holds up. So everybody listening, if you get a chance, play some Contra 3. It's pretty fun, and especially like I said, it's really fun to play. And then also when you're done, sit it down and go find somebody who also has played Contra 3 to talk about some of the deeply ridiculous things that you have just seen, because that is also fun and enjoyable. So it's a game that keeps giving.
Yeah, and coming up on the 90-minute mark, I don't think we have even begun to scratch the surface of every insane visual thing that happens
Not
in this game.
Even close.
So next time, I think we're going to do a deep, introspective, philosophical deep dive on Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine.
Oh, da-na-na, oh.
The curtain falls, the music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player two there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in